Thank you for joining us here on the Jimmy Dore Show. I am your guest host for today, Misty Winston. I'm very excited to welcome our next guest. So I realized that just on Wednesday, Jimmy had Whitney Webb on, and that was a fantastic interview. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It is, I mean, does Whitney ever disappoint, really? I guess some people. She's very polarizing for some reason, but it was a really great interview. But I wanted to have her co-author on the most recent piece that they just did about what's happening in Ohio on the show, because, hey, I am from Ohio, and a lot of crazy stuff is happening here in Ohio. So I wanted to bring on Mark Goodwin. He is the co-author, as I mentioned, of Whitney's the latest piece that they did on the stuff going on with with Ohio and the Les Wexner and all of that stuff. So Mark Goodwin is an investigative researcher, author of The Chain of Custody: The Mafia Holding the Elite's Bitcoin, and editor-in-chief at Bitcoin Magazine, who frequently collaborates with independent journalist Whitney Webb on Unlimited Hangout. Together, they focus on the intersection of intelligence agencies, finance, surveillance technology, and the corporate state, particularly regarding digital finance and cryptocurrencies. And I'm very excited to have him here. We have a lot to get into. Ohio is a mess right now. So Mark, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Misty, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm
great to be here.
Again, I know that Whitney was just on, and that interview was incredibly insightful and educational and all. I mean, Whitney, I'm very jealous of Whitney's brain. I don't have the thing she has where she can retain all of that information and then have like immediate recall. My brain doesn't work like that. And I'm always very fascinated by people who can do that. But I wanted to have you on because while she got into a lot of it, there's still a lot more to discuss, right? Ohio is insane at this point. And one of the big things that I wanted to talk with you about that I think that Whitney touched on was, I don't know why I keep doing that, is this. So there are going to be defense drones being produced in Ohio, and they're going to lean on Ohioans and in fact high school graduates to make them. So can you talk a little bit about this? I have the article and stuff. We can go through it a little bit, but I'd rather hear it from you because this is a big piece of I don't think people recognize the level of front line Ohio genuinely is at this point.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, apparently drone building is the new Peace Corps. You know, it's you get out of high school and go, let's go build drones. Yeah, wow, a lot going on in Ohio. You know, good luck out there. Obviously a beautiful place. I grew up on the East Coast and, you know, would go through it quite a bit. So I feel a lot for the Ohioans. But yeah, I mean, to build off what Whitney talked about earlier this week with Jimmy, which I couldn't agree more about all the nice things you said about her, how great that interview was. And she did an amazing job really looking at how Wexner and co kind of built these private public partnerships and basically made their own government and used that, you know, that power over the local jurisdiction to then, install these companies that are going to have huge effects far beyond Ohio, but really the entire country and I would argue the world. And one of the main ones, obviously, is the one that you just pulled up, which is Anduril. Anduril is it's a spooky company, to say the least. It's one of those Thiel companies. You know, he was an early funder of it, that uses reappropriate something from Lord of the Rings, right? So Palantir, the Palantir are the globes that the wizards can use to spy on orcs and what have you. Start this company that does that, right? And Anduril is the same thing. It's also pulled from a Lord of the Rings book, and it's he kind of likes to name his companies that when you know that they're important. And there's another Ohio company that we'll get into named Erebor that is also from Tolkien, which is the mountain that Smaug keeps all of his riches in, and they're building a bank called Erebor. But back to Anduril, it was founded by Palmer Luckey, who's this very interesting character who, has this funny mullet and this goofy little goatee. And, he's generally, thought of as kind of being this fun, let's wear Hawaiian shirts and be this goofy guy. He was a really young technologist who was the co-founder of Oculus, which he sold to Facebook. that doing the kind of the early VR glasses. He's kind of becoming a pretty popular figure in this sort of Thielverse. He had a pretty well-watched Rogan interview. And I think he said a really telling thing in this interview where he said, hey, we got to stop being the world police. And by we, of course, he was referring to the United States. That's not really how you get, peace, is being this world police thing. It's actually, it costs us a lot of money. It gives us, there's a lot of frictions of political capital because we're, being the world police and we're going and enforcing things that, well beyond our jurisdiction. And he countered it and said, what we really should do, what we really should pivot towards is being the world's gun store. If we really want to, help world peace, like let's sell people guns and let them defend themselves. An interesting way to to bring about world peace is starting an autonomous drone weapon factory, but hey, he thinks different than us,
Yeah.
And so Anduril is that it's the largest production facility. Arsenal One is this big gigafactory they're building right outside Rickenbacker Airport, which has a lot of ties back to the Wexner nexus during the days of Epstein and Wexner running the New Albany company. And specifically, Wexner's brand, the Limited, they were working with these airline companies to move their cargo around because they're, a huge wholesale realtor. And they actually were working with, a CIA Southern Air Transport, an airline company that had done a lot of work with the CIA, and they brought them into Rickenbacker. Now, right outside of Rickenbacker, the same nexus, if we kind of look at, okay, Epstein has sort of transmuted that operation now that he's, gone, has sort of transmuted into the Thielverse. And it's now these same guys that are building the power nexus that was kind of previously held by the Epstein network. And so they're moving in right outside Rickenbacker Airport. And they're building this humongous factory that's being set to, be the premier drone builder in the United States and arguably the world. And, the future of war, as we've sort of found out through, what's going on in Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East now. I mean, it's all about drone warfare. And if you can win the drone level, you really have this huge advantage, this higher ground advantage over the war front if you can control the drone level. And, this was obviously very understood. I think a lot of people kind of like to think that, the government in particular is kind of a bumbling organization and doesn't know what they're doing. And they lose power because they're incompetent, and they could never pull off some grand conspiracy because they're incompetent. And I think people really don't give these people, unfortunately, enough credit for kind of building the future of warfare in a very negative way, of course, I mean, for the credit. But, they saw this coming and they wanted to do it on their home turf and make sure that they could control where these weapons are going and how they're built and be primed for, conveniently, right? And I'll stop rambling here. Q2 2026, which is now. Is when the Arsenal One was beginning to put out their first, products, and we just so happened to enter an armed conflict at the exact moment that the Arsenal One is,
how convenient,
at least listed as being operational. Yeah, very very convenient.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll leave it there for a moment, but yeah, Arsenal One and Anduril, an extremely important company that has a lot of implications for border security and for the future of warfare. And unfortunately, it's in Wexner's backyard.
Of course it is. This guy is like the epitome of evil. Just like he disgusts me. But I brought up this map as you were talking, and I just wanted to clarify why I brought it up. So you'll see that there's two airplanes there. If you look at the bottom one, that's Rickenbacker. Like that's where it's at. I'm maybe like, I don't know, 40 minutes from there ish. So, but it's not, you can't escape it in Ohio. Like if you live in Ohio, you're surrounded by it, whether it's the data centers or whatever it is Wexner's little playground. And obviously he started with New Albany, which by the way, is an incredibly wealthy town. Incredibly wealthy. Like that is, I mean, houses there, like any, like I average like $750,000. I'm guessing, but they're very, very fancy in New Albany. And that's because it's Wexnerville, basically. I don't know why it's called New Albany. But yeah, that's why I wanted to bring this up, because this is a huge part of the future of war. And it troubles me tremendously as an Ohioan that it is centralized in Ohio. It makes me angry, actually. And the idea that they're going to be targeting high school graduates to go work at these drone factories is disgusting. So this article here, it says Anduril began producing autonomous defense drones on Monday in Pickaway County, and the company said it will lean heavily on Ohioans to make them. Yay. Arsenal One is on Anduril's 5 million square foot facility near Rickenbacker Airport. The campus's first production line began work on Fury, a pilotless aerial defense system, on Monday as part of a prototype deal with the U.S. Air Force. I'm not going to go through this whole article, but I just wanted to get some of the generals here. So Furies will be built by a workforce that will rely heavily on Ohio's veterans, students, and non-technical workers. You can see that they're predicting, and this is where they always get people, right? They throw jobs at us. These jobs are not legit, right? Like a lot of this, either the job numbers are being overblown, or they will fudge it by presenting temporary jobs as if they are actual jobs. They do a lot of that stuff. So yeah, these jobs are not really going to help Ohioans very much.
Yeah, 100%. I think the job comment is very interesting, because it seems to be the consent manufacturing spice that they sort of use to move in all these data centers and obviously this giant factory. And the reality is, they're getting these billions of dollars of tax breaks and benefits. Basically, these companies are in effect subsidized by the local governments, the state level governments. And they're creating extremely little, to show for it in terms of jobs, especially the data centers. I mean, I think this idea that, okay, maybe there could be a few thousand jobs by Arsenal One is potentially accurate for a short period of time, but you're literally building autonomous military machines that will probably end up taking over your job, and there'll be machines building machines in the not so distant future. I mean, that's just sort of how the deflationary effects of modern industry and modern war is going, is that a lot of these jobs that, yes, they may exist for a couple years. I doubt actually that there will be thousands and thousands of human laborers in 2035 at this factory. Now, again, I could be wrong. I'm certainly not a manufacturer expert. But, there have been comments from, like Howard Lutnick, who's our Commerce Secretary, talking about, millions of Chinese workers screwing in little screws as part of, we're going to bring all that back to the US, and Trump is going to re-onshore manufacturing. And then a couple of months later, he's like, well, actually, it's all going to be robots, and we're going to save so much money with autonomous robots and AI, and they're actually going to be turning all the screws. So there's a lot of promise of like this has positive effects for humans, and then the actual way that it plays out generally is certainly not the case. And for data centers, it's like, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars. These huge, energy prices going up. The aquifer in the Ohio Valley, River Valley is getting drawn up because there's so much water usage being used, and then they hire 2 security guards and a technician that it's like there's like 40 people that work at the thing, tops. And again, you could argue, okay, well, people had to build it, and they had to build the infrastructure and the roads, and like there are some other trickle down economics of it in the construction of it, but once they're actually set up, the effects on the local Ohioans are very negative rather than sort of positive, unfortunately.
Yeah, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Period. End of story. I mean, these are not only are these companies getting massive tax breaks, so they're already like benefiting financially tremendously, but of course they are. But it is as you said, like these jobs that in order to build the plant or to build the data center or to whatever, those are very temporary jobs. I mean, it might be 3 to 5 years, potentially, depending on the size of the location or whatever, what all it entails. But these are very temporary jobs. And then in particular with the data centers, those things do not employ people. It's computers. Like you might have some security guards and that's it. Now, something like a drone manufacturing plant, like there may be, at least for a time. And it is in this article here where they talk about, let me pull it up here. Arsenal One's first hires were a cohort of 30 Ohioans who were sent to California to train for 7 months on production lines that mirror those in Pickaway County. Going forward, hires will be trained on site at Arsenal One, allowing for more flexibility in hiring. By the end of the year, the company expects to have 250 on site employees. Now, that is a far cry from whatever they said, 4,500. And again, it may be that they're going to build the employee base slowly, whatever it is. But I think that, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but Ohioans are not having it. And I'm happy to see that. It seems to be an across the board, like bipartisan, no thank you, which is good to see. I was a little concerned, but there is a massive pushback, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. But I also just wanted to point out too, if you are in Ohio, or if you are following Ohio, or if you're curious about what's happening in Ohio, which, by the way, I know I already said it, but there's a lot going on in Ohio. It is a tremendous amount of nonsense happening in Ohio right now. It's a little overwhelming, being that I live literally in the middle of Ohio. But the Rooster, I wanted to bring this up because the Rooster is a really fantastic Substack for like inner Ohio stuff. He only covers Ohio stuff. He is an Ohioan. He's been doing it for multiple years. I don't always agree with the stuff that he posts, but he is very good and informative in terms of in Ohio, like all of the things that are happening. And this is an article that he wrote about it. It is very detailed, but he talks a little bit about the tax credits here. So Sarah Donaldson of statehousenews.org revealed Wednesday that Ohio is giving a staggering $850 million in tax credits for the $910 million project. And they're calling it a hyperscale manufacturing facility in Pickaway County. So that's why these companies do it. They're getting a massive tax break. And I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of people which, by the way, I am taking you and Whitney's article on every Ohio news Twitter page and posting it underneath of their articles about this stuff. I'm like, every Ohio needs to read this. So that's my contribution to the cause here, because every Ohioan does need to read it. People need to be aware of what's happening in the state. So again, go check out the Rooster if you want to read the rest of his article on this. He goes into a lot of detail about the specifics and all of that stuff. But I did just want to bring that up quickly.
Hey, we'll be in San Antonio, Albuquerque, Houston, Dallas, Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Burbank, California. That's on May 7th. That's a Saturday. Then we'll be in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, Spokane, Tacoma. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets. See you there.